Hey John, what's Santa doing? He's pulling something out of his bag. What is it? It looks like a saxophone. Hey Santa.
Oh, welcome to WASA Distance Education. This is MEL3E, grade 11 math for everyday life. I'm Pete, I'm your teacher, and we're really winding down the classes before the Christmas break. We have today and we have tomorrow, and then there'll be no classes for 2 weeks until the new year. Okay, you check with the course calendar. So we're actually doing pretty well as far as progress in the course goes. We're actually starting Unit 4 today. Now, if you don't have your Unit 4 handout, I understand that, and I'm going to do my best to kind of make it so that you don't really need to work with that handout for today and tomorrow's class. But I thought we'd give it a try, get started on it, and of course we're going to review this a bit in the new year. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why I want to get a little bit ahead is so that when we start the new year, I can take some time to review everything we've done. Now, just a few housekeeping things. If you haven't been sending in key questions, I know a lot of you have been sending in key questions, and that's great. If you haven't started sending in key questions, you know, I really don't like to ask you to work over the holidays, but really, you should probably do a few key questions and send them in, just to get some marks on the books, so that when the end of the course comes, then I have something to say about whether, you know, we're going to give you an extension or whether they're going to flip you over into the IL part of it, which either way, you'll still be able to make progress in the course. The difference is just how much time you'll have to get that credit. Okay. So, and if you have any questions about that, you can always talk to me or talk to your DEC. So that's where we're at. So yeah, so do send in some key questions if you haven't sent in any already. If you've already sent in some key questions, you don't need to do anything over the holidays. You know, just enjoy that time. I mean, you can. You're welcome to. I certainly like doing math in my spare time, but some people, I understand some people don't like doing that. So we're in Unit 4, and this is actually a continuation of what we've been talking about in Unit 3. This one is about vehicle costs. Okay, and as a matter of fact, it's probably one of the more important lessons, because we've talked about how you buy vehicles, new vehicles, used vehicles, how you can lease a vehicle. Okay, and now we're going to talk about some of the costs that come with having a vehicle, no matter how you get it. Okay, and you know, I think we may all know that that person who has a nice new truck or has a nice truck and it's always parked in their driveway. They don't drive it, and it's because they don't have money for gas. It's because the alternator broke and they don't have money to fix it. You know, it's because it needs new tires and they're all flat and they just can't get some new tires, right? We all know somebody like that, and that's what we're trying to avoid here, right? Because people, you know, they'll buy a truck, they'll buy a car, something, and then they've cut their budget so thin with the truck, with the car, that then they don't have money to put gas in it, right? And you know, some of us have been there. Yes, I've been there before too. Years ago. So that's the whole point of this. We're going to talk about some of the costs or the costs involved in owning a vehicle or having a vehicle, whether you lease it or not. And then that'll help you to kind of adjust your budget, right? You know, it's better maybe to have a cheaper truck and then have money for gas, right? Than to have a really nice fancy truck that has everything you want on it, but you can't put gas in, you can't drive it. Okay, so that's what we're going for here, and just have you to think about all of the different things that you're going to have to spend your money on when you have a vehicle. Now, part of this might be that, say, if you're in the south, then you're thinking about all the costs of a vehicle in addition to the buying it. And in the south, there's all sorts of alternative transportation methods, and we're going to talk about those later on in Unit 4. But in the north here, we have cars, we have trucks. That's pretty much it. There's a train and a bus maybe, but really for your day-to-day transportation, we pretty much have to get around in vehicles. So it's important for us to know what it's going to cost us. Okay, the whole cost. So we're on lesson 16. So this is Unit 4. So if you don't have Unit 4, the handout, then I'll try my best here to kind of explain what's on the screen, and hopefully we'll be able to do it like that. We're on page 3. Now, just in about the middle of page 3, or just maybe the top third of page 3, there in the book it says car expenses, and it shows you, and it's easy to forget that not everywhere people drive cars, right? A lot of places we drive trucks. So up north here, or big cars, we're not driving little tiny cars for the most part because, we can't. There's long distances, the weather, wildlife, you just can't drive small vehicles here. So pretty much everything we spend our money on, our vehicles, probably going to cost a little more. So I crossed it out on the screen. Instead of car expenses, I said truck expenses, and actually it applies to pretty much every vehicle you're going to have. So, if you go through this, think about what it might be if you had a snowmobile or an ATV, right? Um, Now, so it says there are a number of expenses associated with operating a vehicle. Here's a list of a few of the expenses individuals will face with their vehicles. Okay, so gas, okay, oil, okay, so far so good. Oil changes with oil filter, yeah, you can get away for a very long time without changing the oil or the oil filter, but what it does, it's shortening the life of the engine, right? So that's the thing. It's something that you don't really might not think about until the engine starts going funky. So, and then wiper fluid, not such a big deal. Tires, okay, you got to get new tires every once in a while. Air filters, insurance, definitely. To drive on roads in Ontario, you need insurance, and if the police ask you for it, and you don't have it, it's a pretty big fine. And then car payments or truck payments, vehicle payments, whatever, right? If you took out a loan, you have to pay it off. If you are leasing it, you have to pay it off. The only time you don't have payments is if you bought it outright in cash, okay? Or maybe your auntie gave it to you, okay? So that's everyone should have an auntie that'll give them a car, especially when they're first starting out. So here's an example then towards the bottom of page 3, and it's just an example of some expenses. And it's just sort of a typical for a car. It looks like a car, might be, it could be a truck. So I'm just going to read it just in case people don't have the handout. So it says the following are expenses that Jill experienced for 1 year. So $41.56 in oil. So I think we're going to assume there that Jill gets someone like goes to Canadian Tire and gets them to change oil. And lots of people do, I used to change my own oil, but my car is really big and I need special jacks to actually get under it. So I just get Canadian Tire to do it. But a lot of people change their own oil. And then so $1,664 in gas. I think that's pretty typical, and that might even be a little low for some of us around here. I'm spending $25-$30 to go to Dryden on the weekends. So, and if I do that a few times a year, people go to Winnipeg a lot, Thunder Bay, up and down the Winter Road. Spent a lot of money on gas. Okay, $513.24 on new tires. Those are some pretty cheap tires. Maybe, but sometimes you get a deal on them, right? Maybe you get winter tires in the spring or something. But yeah, so every few years you need new tires. Sometimes you can kind of push it, but again, that's something you don't want to cheap out on. I don't want to be, down the highway in the middle of, between cell towers when you have a flat tire. And then wiper fluid, $31. I don't know, wiper fluid. I buy mine at Walmart, but it maybe doesn't cost that much. $17 air filter. So newer vehicles have they're pretty airtight inside, and they have special air filters to keep the pollen and the dust out, and that has to be changed. I think that's what it is. Or no, that's the cabin air filter. This is the engine air filter. Okay, so you have to change that every once in a while too. And I guess they're kind of pricey. Okay, so there's actually two air filters, probably the engine one. And then $917.63 for insurance, which, that makes sense. And that's probably someone with a newer vehicle and a pretty good driving record from the looks of that. And then $3,804 in car payments. So there you go. So that's what Jill experienced. And you notice there's no real maintenance, like no repairs in there. So probably it's a newer vehicle. Or she was just lucky and didn't have anything break down. So then what amount did it cost her per month, right? So the solution here then is that we're going to add up all those items. Now you have to be careful when they're giving you a list like this. The way that this was written, everything was over the course of a year. Okay, so you have to be really careful though, because sometimes they'll give you the insurance payments or the car payments by month, right? Or maybe they'll tell you that she changed your oil twice and it costs this amount each time. So you have to be careful when they're giving you these lists, because they'll sometimes mix up yearly and monthly expenses. Okay, so anyway, yeah, for this list on the bottom of page 3, we just add everything up. Okay, and that's her yearly expenses. And on top of page 4, we get $6,988.43, very close to $7,000. And then we want to know the monthly cost of that. Take the yearly cost, divide by 12, we get $582.37. Now that includes the insurance, that includes the payments. So that's her total cost of owning and operating that vehicle. Okay, and so that's what she would have to budget for in terms of having a vehicle. Okay, as a matter of fact, she should probably budget a little more than that, because unless it's a newer vehicle or a vehicle that has a good warranty, she's gonna also have to budget a little bit for repairs, right? Maybe my vehicle's pretty old, so I go about $100 a month for repairs, which seems to be about right. So a newer vehicle might be maybe a little less than that, maybe half of that. Our vehicle that's newer but not in warranty. So now, here's another example. So suppose Jill drove 28,349 kilometers in that one year. How much did it cost her per kilometer to run her car? So this is a good comparison, because knowing how much it's costing you per kilometer to drive your car can help you compare different vehicles, cars, trucks. It can help you compare different transportation costs. And also, if someone offers you $50 to take them to Thunder Bay and you weren't going to Thunder Bay anyway, you can actually work out whether that's a good deal for you or not, right? By just multiplying the distance by the operating cost of your vehicle. You might ask them for more money if you weren't planning to go there in the first place, right? So now the way we work it out is we take the yearly cost, which we worked out, not the monthly cost, the yearly cost, divided by the number of kilometers that you drove per year, and then we just divide it out, and we're going to end up with a dollar amount. It's and this is one of those cases where you don't round money amounts, because we want to know to the fraction of a penny how much it is, so that we can compare things. So we end up with $0.247 per kilometer. We multiply that by 100 to give us a better way to measure that, which is cents per kilometer. It's 24.7 cents per kilometer. Okay. Now, if you're looking at this, or if you're following along, just without the book, we write dollar amounts, even if it's pennies, with a dollar sign in front, so $0.247. When we're writing cent amounts, we actually put the cent sign after the number, and it's just a convention of the way we do things. Dollar sign in front is actually kind of a North American thing. If you ever see how they write euros, they put euros on the other side as well, on the different side. Then we put the dollar sign. But in any case, so when we switch from dollars to cents, we also put the cents afterwards. But no matter what, that number is per kilometer. So make sure you put the slash and then kilometers. And it literally means per 1 kilometer because it's a measurement, right? So it has to have some sort of units with it. Okay. So there we are. So Jill, the way it worked out then, Jill's spending $582.37 a month for her vehicle, so almost $7,000 a year. She drives 28,349 kilometers in 1 year. So we worked it out. It's costing her 24.7 cents per kilometer. Okay. So if she drives to Dryden, right, how much is it going to cost her, right? It's going to cost her 24 bucks, right? But that includes gas, according to her budget. So not so bad. Right? Now here's the thing, though. That's assuming that she keeps driving that amount. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at some of these support questions, and this is on page 4. Okay. And this is an example. The question on page 4, support question number 1, is an example of the type of question where they mix monthly and yearly expenses. So do watch that. Okay. So here it is. It says the following are car expenses that Kristen incurred for 1 year. So $41.56 for oil, $1.75 a month. Okay, so we need a way to kind of point out the ones that are monthly. So I'm just going to put a green asterisk beside the ones that are monthly. Okay, because we have to convert those to yearly. $48 for wiper fluid. Okay, $12 for air filter. I'm assuming that's an engine air filter and probably a pretty cheap one too. Okay, and then $1,129.43 for insurance. Maybe Kristen has some tickets or something, or she's just young, and that's her insurance a little high. Now notice it's giving the insurance in a yearly amount. Watch that because sometimes insurance is quoted monthly as well. And then $327.18 monthly car payment. So I'm going to put a green asterisk beside that one. Okay. Total kilometers driven in 1 year, 21,395 kilometers. Okay. Now you'll probably note if you're looking at numbers, distance people drive. Up in the north here, it'll be big numbers. Down south, it'll be smaller numbers because they're mostly just driving around, between their cities or pretty close together. Okay, so we tend to drive more kilometers here. So it says, A, how much did Kristen spend on her car in 1 year? So the way to answer that, the first thing we need to do is we have to convert our monthly expenses to yearly expenses. That's probably the easiest way to do it. So there were 2 of them that I noted in the question, the $175 a month for gas. So I'm just going to write it down. I'm going to write gas 112 times $175 per month. Okay. And so her yearly for that, 175, going to be $2,100 for gas. Okay. And then her payment, car payment, PMT, car payment, cap. I wrote cap, car payment. So what I'm doing is I'm writing titles for what my calculation is because there's several calculations you're doing in this question. It's a multi-part question. So just so that I'm not confused and whoever's reading is not confused, I'm going to put some notes about what calculation I'm doing. But I don't have to write a story. I don't have to write a long paragraph about what I'm about to calculate. I wrote CAR space PMT, which pretty much everyone should know is car payment. Right? Anybody who's reading this who understands, that I'm working on a cost for a car is going to understand that. And that's my point. Plunking down a bunch of numbers just without any label on it, it's going to be hard to figure out, even for you when you go back to it a month later. But if you just put just a little bit of info about what calculation you were doing, you'll be fine. So the car payment is also 12 times whatever the monthly payment is. It's $327.18 a month. So we're going to get, let's see, so it's 12 times 327.18. And so her payments add up to $3,926.16. Okay, there you go. So those are some pretty big numbers too. So now next, what's the next step? See, this is we're kind of the four-step problem solving model. You don't necessarily have to do step one. Okay, well, you do. Step one, understanding the question. Step two is formulating a plan. It doesn't have to be a written plan. So, but it could be. We could make a little piece of scrap paper and say, all right, I got to convert everything for all the monthly expenses into yearly. Then I have to add up all the yearly expenses, right? That's your plan. But you could just have that plan in your head as long as you're sure that you're not going to get lost in the middle of it. Okay. Some of us need a bit more planning. I'm probably in that category, needing a bit more planning, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, we're all different. Okay, it depends on how good our working memory is. Depends on how good our short-term memory is. So if you find that you're getting yourself lost in the middle of a question, you might want to write a couple of notes somewhere, maybe at the top of the question, corner of the page, side of the page, piece of scrap paper, what step you're going to take. Okay. So, and it's perfectly fine to do that. You may not see other people doing it, but people do. Or people don't and they get lost in the middle of the question. Okay, so where are we? I think I'm lost now in the middle of the question. Okay, so we've worked out the monthly cost of the gas, no, the yearly cost of the gas. We worked out the yearly cost of the car payment, and now it's time to work out the total cost for 1 year. So I'm just going to go up to the top here and say total cost for 1 year. Okay. That's probably way more writing than I really need to. So it's 41.64 for the oil, 56.64, 56 plus. Okay, so it's a big long list of numbers. I have said before that if it's a list of numbers that they give you, I don't necessarily need to see you writing the whole thing down. The trouble with this one is that you have to manipulate some of those numbers. So if you were going to not write the numbers down, then at the very least, maybe go up and add the yearly amounts to the two that are months that are given as monthly. Okay, so what I've done is beside the gas, the $175 a month for gas, I wrote $2,100, and beside the $327.18 monthly for car payments, I wrote $3,926.16. So that gives somebody an idea of where I'm getting those numbers. Okay, so it's $2,100, and then $48 for wiper fluid, and $12 for an air filter, and $11.29 for 43 for insurance, plus 3,926.16 for car payments. There you go. So and I really didn't format that very well. I ran out of room, but I'm just going to start adding these all up. So 41.56 plus 2,100 plus $48 plus $12 plus 1,129.43 plus 3,926.16, and I think that's all the numbers. And so I have a grand total of 3, 2. Whoa, 3, 2. What am I doing? I am just. Yeah. Okay. No, that wasn't. I sorry, probably scared you there if you were following along with your calculator. Okay. I got 7,257, 15. Okay, and that, and I'm looking at that. This is step 4 of the 4-step problem solving model. I got to look at that and say, is that correct? Okay. Well, I know it's not going to be $700, right? No one gets to drive their car for $700 a year. And I know it's not going to be $70,000 a year because, unless your name is Kanye, you probably don't spend $70,000 a year on your car, right? So, 7,257.15, that seems probably right, So, yeah, that's, yeah, that seems right. And we don't know, right? We could be off at $50 or $100, but we're on, we're in the ballpark, and that's really what we're looking for here when we're doing step 4 is to kind of say, could that be right? is there anything obviously wrong? And that's what we're asking for. So it's to avoid, writing something like 7257, right, as the answer. And it's like, everyone's looking at you. It's like, no. Okay, so, but 7,257 seems right. It's plausible. And, if it was off a little bit, it wouldn't cause anybody a lot of problems, right, in their budget. Okay, so we got the total cost for 1 year. And now part B, it says how much did it cost per month to run a car per month, 12 months a year. Okay, so we can just take that number that we calculated, 7,257,15, and just divide that by 12. Whoops, 12. Let's see if I can fit that in there. Okay, so that's what I've just written down here, $72,557.15. All right, still in my calculator, so I don't even have to type it back in. And now I'm going to round this result at $604.76. Okay. Now, if you find you're having problems, and you have to do the calculations a few times with your calculator, there's a couple of things there. One is if your calculator is like super cheap, it's from a dollar store or something, you might need a better calculator because the keyboards on those cheap ones, the buttons can be a little noisy, a little bouncy, and they might not be recording all your key presses. So that's one thing to look at. The other thing to look at is your technique. Calculators are a little different than, say, a cell phone. And using your thumbs to kind of type the numbers in on a calculator can cause some inaccuracies, right? So, if you're having some problems getting the numbers on your calculator, might consider putting a calculator on the table and just using your index finger to type the numbers. One hand, one finger to put the numbers in, right? Because when we're texting, we're using two thumbs. If you write the and you write and you type AHE, right? It doesn't matter, okay? But if you're typing, $604 in your calculator and you type a 7 instead of a 6, it does matter, you see? And that's why we need a much higher level of accuracy when we're using those calculators. Okay, as a matter of fact, when you're typing with two thumbs and you type something out, something wrong, sometimes it's actually funny, right? It's hilarious. It can be, and it could end. There's websites that have that, right, where you type the wrong thing, but it's funny. But when you're in math and you type the wrong thing, and you're typing, it's usually not all. Well, sometimes it's funny, I guess. So there you go. So it costs $604.76 a month to run her car. So she needs to know that. And if you think about it, remember that that's usually her second highest expense. That usually the highest one is housing, accommodation, right? Your rent, your mortgage, whatever. So that's a pretty big number as well. So somebody who's maybe going to school and has some housing costs, and then they calculate those vehicle costs, they really have to think about that, where they're going to get that money and if it's worth it. Okay, so and that's something we're going to talk about later on in this unit, is some alternatives to spending all that money. Now, if your family's up in Pickle Lake, or if your family's up north, yeah, that may be your only option, right? But we're going to look at some of the possibilities. Okay, what is it per kilometer cost running your car? Okay, so this way, now we got to be careful here because we just calculated her monthly cost. But the kilometers, the total kilometers driven in 1 year, given in the question, 21,395 kilometers. Now that is for a year. That's a whole year. So I have to be careful that we pick the right numbers to use here. You see, these questions, they look pretty easy, right? But there's some detail there. There's some trickiness to them. So we need to pick the right numbers, and the right number is the yearly cost. So your answer to part A is what we have to use here, right? How much did Kristen spend in her car in 1 year? It was $7,257.15. And I got that from my answer to part A. And then we're just going to divide that by the number of kilometers that she drove in 1 year, 21,395. Now, you're dividing a a number by a bigger number, so you're going to get a number that's less than 1. So think about what your answer is going to be. Your answer is going to be in dollars, okay? And it's actually also has kilometers because that 21395 is actually kilometers, has units, right? So it's dollars per kilometer. That's what it is. So let's just work that out. Whoops. Okay. Here I am, I'm talking about having problems with the calculator, and in gripping my calculator with one hand and writing with the other, I actually accidentally put some stuff on my calculator. Whoops. Okay, now I've just accidentally cleared my calculator. 725715 divided by 21395. Okay, and so I'm getting, and you double check here, it's 3. And remember, we really want to round this not to 2 decimal places, but to 3, because we want that extra part of a penny. And now I'm going to divide that by 100, and whoops, okay, and I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to divide that by 100, and I'm going to say 33.9 cents per kilometer. Okay, the number I just wrote down above, dollars, that's actually dollars per kilometer. Don't forget, I put my units in the calculations as well, but really, your final answer for something like that, what does it cost per kilometer running your car? Just the number is really not correct. It's not a complete answer, right? The answer includes per kilometer a measurement. Okay. So the answer then that I got, 33.9 cents per kilometer. So now Kristen knows how much it costs her. If she goes home for the holidays, she can work out exactly how much it's going to cost her. If she wants to take a trip to go on a shopping spree in Winnipeg, she knows how much it costs her. And if she wants to drive to Dryden because they have a big screen TV on sale for $50 off, right? That's $50 cheaper than buying it locally. She can actually work out whether that's actually a good deal or not. If that's the only reason she's going to Dryden, right? And it's costing her 33.9 cents per kilometer. It's not a bad deal, if it's 100 kilometers, but if it's 500 kilometers, probably better off to buy the TV locally. You see, that's where, right? But of course, that's just a financial calculation. If you really want to go to Dryden, that's another story. But that's why we're trying to show you all how to do all these calculations so that you can sort of make your decisions with sort of your eyes wide open to the cost of stuff. And that's it, right? And if you still want to do it, it's fine, right? I'm not saying not to. So I go to Dryden all the time just because my spouse wants to go. That's the reason. Okay? So, and sometimes that's a good reason. So here's some stuff. Top of page. Where are we here? Top of page 5. Okay. Let's take a look. I don't know if I'm going to actually do this one full, but we'll take a look. So it's the following are car expenses that Don incurred for 1 year. Okay. So I think that we've seen that one, and we should be able to. To do that sort of thing, right? It's oil changes, month for gas, new tires, insurance, monthly car payments. So we've done these before, so I think we're fine. Let's take a look at question 3, which is on page 5, and it says Cliff needs 4 new tires for his vehicle. Okay, 4 new tires for his vehicle. How much will 4 new tires cost him at the sale price, including HST? So what we have here, and if you don't have the handout, I'll describe it to you. We have an ad for some tires. Okay, these are the Uniroyal Tiger Paw Touring HR tires, and so then they have all of the great features for these tires, and then it says the regular price is $97.99, but the sale price is $73.49, and that's pretty much how I buy my tires. I wait until Canadian Tire puts them on sale, and then I order them, and then I get them, right? So cheap. So then now the way we work this out, how much will 4 new tires cost from the sale price, including HST? So it's $73.49 in each 4 of them. So it's 4 times $73.49. Okay, so that'll give us, and it's dollars, a dollar amount. That'll give us the cost of tires. By the way, if you're replacing your 4 tires, you have to ask yourself if you need to replace the spare tire as well, right? Because depending on your circumstances, you might have to replace that 5th tire, the spare tire. Don't forget about that one in your trunk or under your truck. I know someone who actually had a flat tire once, and then he went to get his spare tire, and it was flat. It was all rotted out. So yeah. Okay, so let's see. It's $4. Oh, 4 times 73.49. Okay. So that's now for the tires, and this doesn't seem too bad, $293.96, but then we also have to do HST. So we're going to do 113%, 1.13 times 293.96 for the cost, including HST. So times 1.13, and so this is the price that you'll get them. And this is assuming, of course, that you're going to put them on yourself, or maybe you know someone that's going to put them on for you. $332.17. Okay, so that's how much his tires are. Now, how much are these tires? Part B to question 3, support question 3 on page 5. This is how much are these tires per month if he keeps them for 3 years? Well, 3 years seems like that's kind of low. I don't know. Maybe he could do 3 years, maybe 4 years. But anyway, 3 years. Let's assume that he wears them out after 3 years. How are we going to work this out? Okay. It's per month, right? So how many months are in 3 years? So 3 years, it's going to be 3 times 12. It's going to be 36 months, right? So basically, we want to divide the cost of the tires, including HST, $332.17, by the number of months he's going to keep them, which is 36. Okay, so that's a kind of a complex type of question, isn't it? You have to really go through a couple of steps here. $332.17 divided by 36. And so then it ends up being $9.23. I'm just going to round it off. $9.23 per month. Okay, if he keeps them for 3 years. We're not used to thinking of stuff that we buy in that like that, right? It's $9.23 a month. Okay, so there's the difference between spending, say, $15 a month on your tires versus $9.23 a month on your tires, right? So there are tires out there. You can get tires for your truck. It costs a couple $100 each. Okay, and then you can work out the monthly cost of those versus maybe the tires don't look quite as good, but they're a lot cheaper. Okay, and you decide if that's worth it. And then the other thing that we can work out is how much are these tires per kilometer if he drives 57,000 kilometers on them. Now, in the little ad that they give us, it says that they're rated for 90,000 kilometers performance. But, you know, if you're driving up and down the ice road, if you're driving up and down the highway quite a bit, rough roads, back roads, off-road, yeah, chances are maybe you might not get the whole manufacturer rated performance out of them. But let's say that he wears them out after 57,000 kilometers. Okay, so let's try that. So how are we going to do that calculation? What are we trying to do? How much are these tires per kilometer? See, when you see per kilometer, that means you're dividing by kilometers. That's literally what that means. So we can actually look at the cost of the tires, which is with tax, $332.17, and we're going to divide it by the number of kilometers he drives, 57,000 kilometers. And so we have dollars divided by kilometers, right? $332.17 divided by 57,000 kilometers, and our answer is going to be dollars per kilometer. That's how that works. So let's try that out. That's going to be 332.17 divided by 57,000. And we're going to get a sort of an interesting number, zero, whoops, and it's going to be in dollars, 0.0058. Let's round that to 3. We're going to keep, as best we can, keep 3 significant digits, so non-zero digits. Now, that's per kilometer. Let's multiply that by 100 to get cents per kilometer, but it's still going to be 0.583 cents per kilometer. So half a cent per kilometer. That's not so bad. So it's it's not even you got to kind of squint a little bit at it, but it's not 58 cents a kilometer. It's half a cent. Because the second number is in cents already. So 0.58 of a cent, 0.6 cents, not just a little over half a cent, basically, per kilometer to drive on those tires. That seems like a pretty good bargain, actually. When you think about all the other costs, it's costing 23 cents per kilometer for just for gas and payments and insurance and stuff. So that seems to be a pretty minor cost. Okay, but this is how. If this is how you can budget, right? You can decide what's really important to you, and then spend your money there, and then skimp on all the other stuff, right? So if good-looking tires are important to you, you work out how much they're going to cost you, then go for it, right? But then you're going to have to skimp somewhere else, right? And maybe buy a cheaper vehicle, maybe cut back on some other expense, maybe not even related to the vehicle, right? And that's really how people who seem to have it all, that's one of the ways, right? Sort of spending their money strategically. So let's take a look at this last one. We'll probably won't spend too much time on it. Lester needs a new muffler. Oh, maybe we will. A new muffler. Okay, well, that's an important thing. Now, I'm not sure. If somebody's driving around with a truck and her muffler fell off and it's really loud, right? Maybe that's okay. But certainly around town, any place where there's lots of police kind of sitting around who don't have a lot to do, you're probably going to pull you over and give you a ticket for if your muffler fell off, they'll probably give you a ticket for it, right? Unless, I don't know, maybe... Like if they pull you over and they say, "Oh, your muffler fell off," and you go, "Really?" And then you get out and you look at it and go, "Wow," maybe they won't give you a ticket, right? But if you go, "So yeah, that happened a month ago," yeah, I'd probably give you a ticket. So yeah, so you're supposed to have a muffler on your car, and besides which, the new vehicles really need that muffler, and it's gonna not be very good for the engine. So you need a muffler, and it's something that wears out. Okay, I don't know. I've had cars where I've had 3 mufflers on it, so that's either the mufflers aren't lasting very long or the cars are lasting longer. So Lester needs a new muffler installed in his vehicle. Now he purchased a new exhaust system. Now notice we went from muffler to exhaust system for $487.26. So that's pretty typical. Car's 6-7 years old, truck's 6-7 years old. You're going to need a new muffler system, a whole exhaust system, usually just as cheap to get a whole new thing. Now, sometimes that happens not after 6 or 7 years. Sometimes that happens after you're driving down a winter road and you're doing 123 kilometers an hour and suddenly you hit a bump and you wonder what that was, and then 5 seconds later you actually land because you've been flying through the air for that long, and then there's a big bang and suddenly your truck's drive sounds really, really loud. And then you kind of wonder what that was. And then you get home and you find your muffler's missing. Okay, that can happen at any time. So $487.26. So if you don't have the money for it, that's the thing. You might have to leave your truck parked for a while. How much is this exhaust system per month if it lasts for 10 years? Well, that's pretty ambitious, but let's try it. So it's 487. So he's gonna go to Canadian Tire and he's gonna get the exhaust system per month. Oh boy. Okay, we got to do a calculation. It's 12 months a year times 10 years is 120 months. So we'll divide that by 120. Okay, so that's not going to be so bad. But yeah, you go to Canadian Tire. Sometimes they have these muffler shops, and I don't know. The muffler shops are alright, I guess. They're going to try and sell you all sorts of stuff, right? If you go to the muffler shop, so it's going to be, or it's dollars divided by months, so it's going to be $4.06 per month. Okay, so see how that works. So that's not so bad. Now, so what if they come to him and say, well, we can give you the gold package for $800, right? Well, then you know it's going to be $8 a month. That's starting to really eat into your budget, right? That's a couple of Tim Hortons runs a month is going to cost you, right? How much is this exhaust system per kilometer if he drives 192,000 kilometers with it? Okay, so again, you know, and I noticed that we didn't even calculate tax on that GST. So there's a question for you. Should we have calculated GST on that? It doesn't say whether it's before or after tax, does it? So we really don't have enough information. If we wanted to be really precise, we'd probably have to go try and find out what shop that was, try and find out whether that's the before or after tax cost. So, or we could just assume, assume the worst case scenario, which is that it doesn't include tax, because that way, if we overestimate the cost per month, it's better than underestimating it. Now, when I did this calculation, $487.26 divided by 192,000 kilometers, my calculator did something weird, very weird. Your calculator might do the same thing. It gave me 2.1148 and a bunch of other digits, E minus 5. So that's a really weird number. And what this is a way for your calculator to basically tell you, I have so many zeros in front of this number that if I tried to display it, it would all be zeros. So it's a way that calculators have of displaying a very small number. Okay, what this e to the minus 5 is telling you have to move the decimal place 5 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's really the number there. It's 0.0002, so it's a really small number. So one of the ways we can fix this, we're going to multiply without writing anything down because it's kind of pointless. We're going to multiply the number in your display by 100 to turn it into cents. So at least we'll have some, and it's still a very small number, 0.002 11 cents per kilometer. So it's a very, very small number. Okay. So this is, you may just sort of take you back to your school days. The scientific notation is what that is. It's 2.1148 times 10 to the minus 5 is actually what they're trying to tell you there. But basically this number, the minus 5, you're just going to move the decimal place 5 spots to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? To figure out what the number actually is. Which, so in the case that I wrote down, it's 0.000. There should be 4 zeros to 1148. Very small number. Oops, 1148. Okay. Right, so that's the calculation there. Now I'm just going to start this next little thing. We'll actually pick it up here tomorrow, fuel efficiency, because we're actually probably going to continue doing this tomorrow and then do a bit of review. Yeah, so fuel efficiency when you're shopping for a new vehicle, it's one of those things that you can do besides the price to really help influence your budget, the cost. We've noticed as we're looking at the cost of the vehicles, especially for a newer vehicle, really your main cost besides your payment, your next biggest cost is your insurance and your gas, right, your fuel. Okay. Now the insurance, the way you influence your insurance is to maybe not be naughty on a highway, not get demerits, right? So right down when you're going by an old elder's home, right, a community safety zone, they have them for elders, and then they have them for schools as well, right? So that's how you influence your insurance costs. And then some things you can't control, like your age. The younger you are, the higher the insurance. But one thing you can control when you're buying a vehicle is you can buy a vehicle that's more efficient, that has better fuel efficiency. And now they're going to show a bunch of cars, I think, in these charts, which is kind of unfortunate, but a lot of this does apply to trucks as well. As a matter of fact, I was up in a community in the fall. We were driving along, and I noticed a display, a very fancy display on this truck, and the driver is telling me, yeah, what it does is it shuts down some of the cylinders in the engine when they're not needed, and that's what it was telling us, was that it was just running on maybe half the cylinders in the engine. That's pretty impressive technology. So you can get that even on trucks, okay, and that'll save you some money in fuel, because if you're cruising down the ice road and there's no headwind, and maybe you got a tailwind, and everything's flat and smooth and the weather's good, maybe your truck can shut down some of the cylinders and not burn so much fuel. So that's the way to do it. So the way we calculate fuel efficiency now, if you're a little older like I am, this might be it's going to take a little bit of practice, and I recommend it's worth it. Okay, back in the day, we measure stuff in miles per gallon. Okay, so miles per gallon. And the problem with that, compared to what we're doing now, we're doing liters per 100 kilometers. Okay, so there's a couple of things there. First of all, liters, the measure for liters is capital L. And when you went to school, maybe they measured liters, maybe you did liters like that, right? In little l. And that was the metric prefix or suffix for liters for many years. And the problem with that is that little l looks so much like a 1 in a lot of typefaces that it was just too confusing. Okay, so in metric now, it's changed. Now we're using capital L. Now, if you still write it little l, as long as I can tell it's not a 1, then you're fine. I'm not going to say anything. Okay. The other thing is that we measure fuel efficiency is liters per 100 kilometers. And the reason for the 100 kilometers is if we measured it per kilometer, it would just be such a small number that, again, we would be looking at scientific notation on your calculator. So they just decided on liters per 100 kilometers. Now, here's the problem. If you're used to measuring miles per gallon, and then we switch to liters per 100 kilometers, miles per gallon, the bigger the number, the better, right? 100 miles per gallon. That's excellent. Nobody gets 100. Your old F-150 probably got about 8 miles per gallon in the city, right? Now, your modern F-150 probably getting 20 miles per gallon in the city and probably 30 on the highway, right? The thing is that liters per 100 kilometers is backwards from the way we used to measure it. It's the amount of fuel used per distance rather than the distance per fuel, per quantity of fuel, meaning that the smaller the number in liters per 100 kilometers in modern fuel efficiency, the smaller the number, the better. Okay? It takes a little bit of changing of your thinking to work on modern fuel efficiency. But once you get used to it, it takes a little bit of thinking about it at first. But once you get used to it, it actually makes sense, and it's quite easy then to compare, right? But basically, the smaller the number, the better. That's what you're saying, right? So your truck will probably have a bigger number than a tiny little car on fuel efficiency now, okay? Whereas it used to be the other way around. So I'm going to just leave it there for today. We're going to pick this up right at this point. I'll review this a little bit again tomorrow. Hopefully you'll get a chance to get your Unit 4 handout if you don't have it. At the very least, if you want one, contact me today and I can email it to you, and then you'll have it to look at. Okay. Tomorrow will be our last class before the holidays. So so that's it. So I guess so that'll be it for today then. We'll just wrap it up. And yeah, so let's just wrap it up. Okay. So now, if you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to contact me. Now, if you have any questions over holidays, if you are working on your courses, you're working on your key questions, I will be available by Facebook Messenger and by my text message. You can also send an email to my NNEC account, and I'll be able to answer those any questions you have over the holidays. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up for now. Talk to you tomorrow.
Makes you wish it was Christmas every day. See the joy in the children's eyes, the way that we